Okay, no lollygagging today. I'm gonna just start talking. Which statement is true regarding the inspection of a stressed skin metal wing assembly known to have been critically loaded? If genuine rivet tipping has occurred, groups of consecutive rivet heads will be tipped in the same direction. What precaution, if any, should be taken to prevent corrosion inside a repaired metal honeycomb structure? Prime the repair with a corrosion inhibitor and seal from the atmosphere. When repairing a small hole on a metal stressed skin, the major consideration in the design of the patch should be the shear strength of the riveted joint. Repairs or splices involving stringers on the lower surface of stressed skin metal wings are usually permitted but are normally more critical in reference to strength and tension than similar repairs to the upper surface. Clad aluminum alloys are used in aircraft because they have surface layers of pure aluminum or aluminum alloy bonded to the core material to inhibit corrosion. Aircraft structural units such as spars, engine supports, etc., which have been built up from sheet metal, are normally repairable using approved methods. Parts fabricated from Alclad 2024 T3 aluminum sheet stock must have all scratches, kinks, tool marks, nicks, etc. held to a minimum. If a streamlined cover plate is to be hand formed using a form block, a piece of dead soft aluminum should first be placed over the hollow portion of the mold and securely fastened in place. The bumping operation should be started by tapping the aluminum lightly around the edges and gradually working down into the center. You can distinguish between aluminum and aluminum alloy by testing with a 10% solution of caustic soda. When repairing puncture type damage to a metal face laminated honeycomb panel, the edges of the doubler should be tapered to 100 times the thickness of the metal. Which is correct concerning the use of a file? Apply pressure on the forward stroke only, except when filing very soft metals such as lead or aluminum. Which procedure is correct when using a reamer to finish a drilled hole to the correct size? Turn the reamer only in the cutting direction. When straightening members made of 2024 T4, you should straighten cold and reinforce. The primary alloying agent of 2024 T3 is indicated by the number 2, which is also copper. Which part of the 2017 T36 aluminum alloy designation indicates the primary alloying agent used in its manufacture? 2 again. The sight line on a sheet metal flat layout to be bent in a cornice or box break is measured and marked 1 radius from the bend tangent line that is placed under the break. A main difference between lock bolt / huck bolt tension and shear fasteners, other than their application, is the number of locking collar grooves. The general rule for finding the proper rivet diameter is 3 times the thickness of the thickest sheet. The shop head of a rivet should be 1 1/2 times the rivet diameter, 1 1/2 times the diameter of the rivet shank. One of the main advantages of high lock type fasteners over earlier generations is that they can be installed with ordinary hand tools. Which of the following is one advantage of high lock fasteners? Inability to be over torqued. The markings on the head of a Zeus fastener identify the body diameter, type of head, and length of the fastener. The Zeus turnlock fastener consists of a stud, grommet, and receptacle. The stud length is measured in hundredths of an inch. The Zeus turnlock fastener consists of a stud, grommet, and receptacle. The stud diameter is measured in sixteenths of an inch. Threaded rivets or riv nuts are commonly used to attach parts or components with screws to sheet metal. Select the alternative which best describes the function of the flute section of a twist drill. It forms the cutting edges of the drill point. What should be the included angle of a twist drill for soft metals? 90 degrees. When comparing the machining techniques for stainless steel sheet material to those for aluminum alloy sheet, it is normally considered good practice to drill the stainless steel at a lower speed with more pressure applied to the drill. What is the minimum edge distance allowed for aluminum alloy single lap sheet splices containing a single row of rivets as compared to a joint with multiple rows, all rivets being equal in diameter? The minimum edge distance for the single row is equal to that for the multiple row. When drilling stainless steel, the drill should have an included angle of 140 degrees and turn at a low speed. What should be the included angle of a twist drill for hard metal? 118 degrees. Rivet gauge, or transverse pitch, is the distance between the centers of rivets in adjacent rows. Rivet pitch is the distance between the centers of adjacent rivets in the same row. What is indicated by a black, smoky residue streaming back from some of the rivets on an aircraft? Fretting corrosion is occurring between the rivets and the skin. The identifying marks on the heads of aluminum alloy rivets indicate the specific alloy used in the manufacture of the rivets. When an MS-2470D rivet is installed, its full shear strength is obtained only after a period of age hardening. Under certain conditions, Type A rivets Under certain conditions, Type A rivets are not used because of their low strength characteristics. A rivet set used to drive MS-2470 rivets should have a slightly greater radius than the rivet head. Which part of 2017 T36 alloy indicates the temper designation? The T36. Most rivets used in aircraft construction have dimples. MS-2426AD 6-5 indicates a countersunk rivet which has an overall length of 5/16 of an inch. Mild steel rivets are used for riveting steel parts. When riveting dissimilar metals together, what precautions must be taken to prevent an electrolytic action? Place a protective separator between areas of potential electrical difference. The length of a rivet used the length of a rivet to be used to join a sheet of 032 and 064 inch aluminum alloy should be equal to 1 1/2 times the rivet diameter plus 96 thousandths of an inch. Which rivet is used for riveting magnesium alloy structures? 5056 aluminum. Which rivet is used for riveting nickel steel alloys? Monel. I'm not doing math. When a piece of aluminum alloy is to be bent using a minimum radius for the type and thickness of material, the layout should be made so that the bend will be 90 degrees to the grain of the sheet. If it is necessary to compute a bend allowance problem and bend allowance tables are not available, The neutral axis of the bend can be found by adding approximately 1/2 the stock thickness to the bend radius. Unless otherwise specified, the radius of a bend is the inside radius of the metal being formed. The sharpest bend that can be placed in a piece of metal without critically weakening the part is called the minimum radius of bend. A piece of sheet metal is bent to a certain radius. The curvature of the bend is referred to as the bend radius. When bending metal, the material on the outside of the curve stretches while the material on the inside of the curve compresses. That part of the material which is not affected by either stress is the neutral line. On a sheet metal fitting layout with a single bend, allow for stretching by subtracting the setback from both legs. Alloy 2117 rivets are heat treated by the manufacturer and do not require heat treatment before being driven. What is the purpose of refrigerating 2017 and 2024 aluminum alloy rivets after heat treatment? To retard age hardening. Heat-treated rivets in the D and double D series that are not driven with the prescribed time within the prescribed time after heat treatment or removal from refrigeration must be reheat treated before use. Which rivet may be used as received without further treatment? 2117 T3. A double D rivet is heat treated before use to soften to facilitate riveting. The aluminum alloys used in aircraft construction are usually hardened by which method? Heat treatment. A well-designed rivet joint will subject the rivets to shear loads. What is the minimum edge distance for aircraft rivets? 2 times the diameter of the rivet shank. What is the minimum spacing for a single row of aircraft rivets? 3 times the diameter of the rivet shank. A factor which determines the minimum space between rivets is the diameter of the rivets being used. Which of the following need not be considered when determining minimum rivet spacing? Rivet length. The most important factors needed to make a flat pattern layout are radius, thickness, and degree of bend. Which of the following statements is true regarding replacement rivets? The new edge distance of larger replacement rivet must not be less than minimums. The installation of Cherry Max and Olympic lock rivets is accomplished by utilizing a pulling tool. What is one of the determining factors which permits machine countersinking when flush riveting? Thickness of the material is greater than the thickness of the rivet head. What is generally the best procedure to use when removing a solid shank rivet? Drill to the base of the manufactured rivet head with the drill one size smaller than the rivet shank and remove the rivet with a punch. Joggles in removed rivet shanks would indicate partial shear failure. What type of loads cause the most rivet failures? Shear. The purpose of a joggle is to allow clearance for a sheet or an extrusion. Shallow scratches in sheet metal may be repaired by burnishing. To add to this, I'm going to ask a few questions about sheet metal that anybody should know. What measurement is rivet diameter measured in? 1/32 of an inch. What dimension is rivet length measured in? 1/16 of an inch. How would you find proper rivet diameter? 3 times the thickness of the thickest sheet, then multiply that number by 32. How do you find proper rivet length? The grip plus 1.5 times the diameter, then multiply that by 16. What is the minimum edge distance? 2D. What is the recommended edge distance? 3D. What is the maximum edge distance? 4D. Define edge distance. The distance from the center of the rivet hole to the edge of the sheet. What is minimum pitch? 3D. What is recommended pitch? 6D to 8D. What is max pitch? 12D. Define pitch. Pitch is the distance between centers of adjacent rivets in the same row. Define gauge. The distance between the centers of rivets in adjacent rows. In the part number AN 470 AD 4-5, what does the AN mean? Air Force Navy Standard. In the part number AN 470 AD 4-5, what does the 470 mean? It's a universal head rivet. In the part number AN 470 AD 4-5, what does the AD mean? The alloy used is 2017 aluminum. In the part number AN 470 AD 4-5, what does the 4 mean? The 4 is the diameter in 30 seconds. In the part number AN 470 AD 4-5, what does the 5 mean? The length in 16ths of an inch. How do I find setback? You add your radius plus your thickness. How do I find my flat? Mold line dimension minus your setback. How would I find sight line? Mold line dimension minus bend radius. How do I find the total developed width? Bend allowance plus all legs. How would I find bend allowance? 2 times pi, radius plus half the thickness, all divided by 4.